Hello. In this short video, I wanted to take a look at one of the new features that shipped in version 3 of Cake. So let's go ahead and jump in. So where I'm going to start is I've got a relatively simple build.cake script here. So all it's got is it's got a setup method, it's got a teardown method, it's got a couple of tasks. The entry point for this script is the default task, and the default task takes a dependency on a couple of other tasks. So what we'll see is up here is in the not skip task. All we're doing is we're outputting some information, but the skip task has got a criteria on it, meaning that this task is always going to get skipped. And we've got a reason here as to why that task was skipped. Now, in a normal build script or in a real world build script, you would have this built based on a condition, and you would have the information about the reason for why it was skipped in the description of that criteria. So if we go ahead and we run this in PowerShell here, so I'm going to do .NET Cake, I'm going to run build.cake. What we'll see from the output of that script is the information that we would expect. We've got the information that the setup was executed, that the not skip task was executed, that the default task, the entry task was ran, but there was no information in the top level output here that the skip task was actually skipped. Now, if we scroll down into the summary, we'll see that we do get information that that task was indeed skipped, but we don't get any information about why it was skipped. Now, if I run that same script again, but I increase the verbosity level, so I'm going to run this with diagnostic verbosity, what we'll see in the output is that we will get information about why it was skipped. Now, that description that we added to the criteria will be brought out, and we can see here that this is a skipping task. This task was skipped for a good reason. Now, the only problem that I have with that, and that's one of the reasons that I added this feature into Cake, is that if I've got a lengthy build script, there's quite a bit of scrolling there I would have to do in order to get back to the understanding of why a particular task was skipped. So what I've done, and one of the features that I've added, is we've changed to a different rendering engine for the console output of Cake. And we can control that via a configuration value. Now, that configuration value can either be done within the cake.config file that you might have in your project already. So for example, I can change this to true here. Or you can set it via an environment variable on the, say, a build system, or you can pass it in as a command line argument to when you actually execute Cake. So what we're using here is we're using the Spectre console library for rendering the console output. And what happens there, if I run that same command again, but this time I'm going to take the verbosity off, I'm going to run that same build.cake script, and we're going to get the same output as we did before. Here was the setup, this was the not skip task, here's the default task, the entry point, and here's the teardown. But down at the bottom here in the summary, we've now got specific information about which criteria actually caused that task to be skipped. So I personally think this is a great addition because it saves scrolling back through your Cake script in order to find out why a particular task was skipped. You get it right there in the summary output. Now, if you have a build script that doesn't have a task that's skipped, let's just modify this one slightly. So what I'll do is I will comment out the is dependent on that skip task. And if we go back and run that same script again, then what we'll see in the summary output is that we don't have that skipped column anymore because there's no information that needs to be shown there. So the main addition there is the addition of the skipped reason column to the summary output, but we have actually changed the rendering of all of the kind of header entry points here for the tasks to use Spectre console output. So now that we're using Spectre console, there might be some additional changes or improvements to the output to take advantage of some of the functionality of Spectre console. But at the minute, it is an opt-in configuration in order to utilize that new rendering engine. It's not on by default. In a future version of Cake, we might switch it on by default. But for now, like I say, it's a configuration option that you can set either in your cake.config file as an environment variable or as a direct command line argument when you're executing Cake. So hopefully this has been useful. I really like this new feature and I hope that you do too. Thank you very much.